I think a materialist approach to things is very, very consistent with my experience in Christian social justice.
I feel like the deeper I get into anarchist practice, the deeper my faith is getting at the same time.
I would hope that, securing means of life for all would be something all people of faith would say, oh yes, that's at the basis of what we believe.
And those who are most marginalized know the most about the true, the good, and the beautiful.
To me, it's less that I think building class solidarity is a bad thing, as much as it seems like if you don't attend to things like anti-Black racism, that's always going to get in the way of building class solidarity, actually.
And when you go back, you find that a lot of revolutionary grassroots participatory movements, the precursors to what you could call the barrio assemblies and these grassroots neighborhood organizations, a lot of these were sponsored by the church.
What does it mean to say that the Christian tradition is internally contradictory and there are antagonisms there and you're always being faithful to some aspects and betraying other aspects?
Welcome to the Magnificast, a podcast about Christianity and leftist politics. I'm Dean Detloff. I'm a PhD student at the Institute for Christian Studies in Toronto.
And I'm Matt Bernico. I teach media studies at Greenville University in Greenville, Illinois.
This week we are talking with folks from Friendly Fire in Philadelphia, specifically Margot, Michael, and Chris, my favorite folk trio. We have done a couple episodes on Friendly Fire in the past, so we encourage you to check those out. One with Haesung and Catherine, and then another one with Haesung later on. So really good stuff, but it's always nice to kind of check in and see what they're up to.
Friendly Fire is such a cool thing to exist, and it makes me feel, I don't know, a little bit better about the world, I guess.
Yeah.
Like in every episode, we think about all these like really cool past Christians who, established people's churches or joined the Communist Party or whatever, and we think about how cool they are. But in this episode, we're going to just talk to some people who are alive right now and doing the same thing.
People that the Magnificasters 50 years from now will make episodes about.
Yeah, that's true. The Magnificast, a podcast about a podcast that happened 50 years ago.
Yeah, when we will it to younger Christian leftists in our wills, they'll have to figure all this out.
They'll have to do it. It's not a will, it's a curse. We'll pass it on to them.
That's true.
That's how podcasts work. They're sort of like a magical curse that just gets bestowed upon you. Yeah,
like you hand them an old folded up piece of paper and they unfold it and it has like the logo of your podcast on it and then they're stuck with it forever.
Oh no. All right, well, hey, let's just get this curse right underway and get talking to these Friendly Fire folks. This week on the Magnificast, we're talking with some folks from Friendly Fire. We've got Margot, Michael, and Chris. Do y'all want to just introduce yourselves to get us kind of started?
Yeah, I'm Margot. I'm Friendly Fire and the IWW.
I'm Michael. I'm with Friendly Fire, the IWW, the GEC. Way too many acronyms. And I also study philosophy of religion.
And I'm Chris, and I also work with Friendly Fire, and I'm also in the IWW.
Nice. Real wobbly group over there.
For sure.
Well, thanks again for hanging out with us tonight. Really appreciate that. Also, it's cool that we caught you guys on a Tuesday, because you guys have you were just saying your prayer meetings tonight. Maybe we could just start off talking a little bit about that. There's a lot of things that we want to sort of get on the table, but we thought it might be fun to also just give a little snapshot of like the kind of spiritual life that you guys are trying to develop. That's something that we've touched on a little bit in the past when we've talked to Haesung in particular. So yeah, I don't know, what's that gathering like, and maybe what did you guys do tonight? What's a sort of Tuesday gathering look like for you guys?
Yeah, so Tuesday nights are typically when we do our unprogrammed Quaker style meeting. So it's fairly open to the public. We gather here typically at my apartment, and we usually just do a silent prayer. Following the traditional Quaker unprogrammed meeting where when one feels compelled to speak, you do so. We change it up a little bit. We don't really put a limitation on how many times someone can speak. Traditionally it's speaking once, but we really encourage, however many times you feel compelled to speak, you do so. And yeah, so that's a typical Tuesday for us. And once a month, we'll also do a big meal, communal meal with a shorter prayer.
So that's the Tuesday meeting. There's another meeting that you guys do as well, right?
The programmed worship is on Saturday mornings, usually at my house. It's been on hiatus for the last couple of weeks just because we've all been really busy. We'll probably talk about the anti-fascist stuff that happened last weekend a little bit later. So that's one of the reasons why, because normally we'd be meeting for programmed worship at the time that we were instead telling the Proud Boys to get the hell out of Philadelphia. Yeah, so that tends to follow the Book of Common Prayer morning worship format. Yeah, so it's a bit more what you'd see in like a mainline Protestant kind of group in these cases.
That's so neat. It's so cool that you guys, I don't know, all found each other and just are doing this as both activists and Christians. How did that start? Is there an origin story of Friendly Fire?
I guess Friendly Fire really kind of came to be in Philadelphia as a whole. This past May for the May Day retreat is when it kind of the people came together and started building the base for what we saw Friendly Fire to be in our prayer.
Yeah, it started out with more BCP style worship as well. Yeah, it was when it was shortly after Margot came to Philadelphia, I think that we really started meeting regularly. It was, I think Margot, Haesung, and I are the ones who are still most active that were there at the start of the Philadelphia Friendly Fire formation.
I'm really excited to talk more about how the kind of really like eclectic spirituality that Friendly Fire develops works on the ground, and we can get into that in a minute. But I thought also it might be interesting to mention right at the top some of the political stuff that you've been involved in, especially recently as well, just to kind of get the two sides of Friendly Fire on the table. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about some of the actions you've been involved in. You were a big part of the Occupy ICE stuff in Philadelphia over the summer, and then more recently the anti-fascist rally you were just mentioning. So yeah, how does Friendly Fire kind of factor into those lefty things while you're also meeting for prayer?
Yeah, I guess to start the one at the beginning of the summer, the Occupy ICE in Philadelphia. Friendly Fire went into it kind of as a way to accompany the left in Philadelphia as it was moving into this mass action. I remember one of the funnier and also more beautiful and intense moments was the exorcism that was performed on the ICE building. That was an idea that Michael had, actually.
I think somebody else had mentioned it first, but then I was the one who got super excited and actually researched what the traditional exorcism prayer looked like.
I know it was initially maybe.
I think it either his or the other person.
But anyway, it was this space at the occupation. There were so many people there, and everyone there in that moment gathered around as two people from Friendly Fire. I think it was me and you. So it was Marco and Michael performed an exorcism on the ICE building. And it was kind of beautiful because afterwards a lot of people came up and were saying, it was really amazing to see these images that I grew up with in this space. And it kind of healed a little bit of like what it could be to believe in God and also continue as a leftist and be a leftist who is like spiritual and mystical. So then after that, there was a meeting that happened on at the Occupy ICE. So like people came together and prayed in like a Quaker style meeting. People from different religions, different faiths came together in that space. So it became kind of a space of healing and respite and that kind of craziness that was the occupation.
That's so cool. I remember seeing some videos of that exorcism going around on Twitter at the time. And they were shared by people who seemed to me to not be in Friendly Fire, and they were just like something really wild's going on. I can't really figure it out, but I'm like taking this video of it. And I thought that was like super cool, really, really neat way of using that spiritual imagery, but also like trying to connect with it in a way that isn't like ironic necessarily, but just seeing what kind of power is in that symbolism. That's really an amazing thing, I think.
Yeah, I think one of the really beautiful things about Friendly Fire is the thing that I enjoy about it is co-opting like those religious symbols, especially the symbols of my youth, like growing up Catholic, being able to take those things that really formed my imagination and apply it to like my organizing and like those prophetic demonstrations, because it gives a space to like also pull other people in with that same shared experience.
Yeah, I think one of the things I noticed, because we all run in other leftist circles besides Friendly Fire alone. I mean, you heard all of us say we're Wobblies, but I think at that point I was the only one of the three of us who was a Wobbly. Mm-hmm. And within the Wobblies, amongst like atheists, and it was almost universally positive response. One exception, but like everybody else was really happy with it. I know we cut it a little bit short, and some people had said we shouldn't have. There's also a really neat thing that happened between me and another Wobbly who was there, where like we were both exhausted after the first couple of days of this. We had been arrested, and we're just kind of overwhelmed, and we're talking about how tired we were via messenger. And this person is practices like Wicca, witchcraft types of things, and offered to do a like restorative spell for me, and I prayed for her on my rosary, and that was a really cool kind of experience.
That is really cool.
I guess ripping off a few of these points that you guys are bringing up here, Friendly Fire definitely seems kind of like an interesting Christian interfaith activist group that definitely draws a lot on Quakerism. At least that's kind of how I heard about it in the beginning, was through, people who were mainly interested in Quakerism, I suppose. But you guys also have some elements of other types of Christian expressions as well, and it's clear that, Friendly Fire isn't just for Quakers. So can you tell us about the denominations and spiritualities present within Friendly Fire? Is it only Christians? Are there non-Christians? Are there other people of different faiths as well? Or how does that work out?
So, we're actually... I would say that we are pretty diverse in our flavors of religion, for lack of a better term. So, and for clarification, this is Chris speaking. So, myself personally, I'm Muslim. I was raised Catholic, but I've been Muslim now for going on 6 years or so. And while we are predominantly Christian, I think that we have especially because we do this weekly worship where it's unprogrammed, and just by the virtue of what it is welcoming to people of all sorts of different faith traditions. We've had people here who, do work in, all sorts of esotericism, and, we've had a chaos magician here before. So it's, it really is kind of open to whoever wants to come, and I think we've been talking about this a lot lately, and it's really important to us to not limit ourselves in that sort of way, because frankly, being religious and on the left already kind of puts us in a sort of minority, and to try and limit ourselves even further by saying that we're one flavor of Christianity or explicitly Christian or explicitly whatever, it really doesn't do us any service. And, we're trying to unite all sorts of people on the left who, follow any sort of mystic tradition or feel any sort of calling to faith. And that's really what's important to us. And I think that we try really hard to, make that true.
That's really neat. It kind of reminds me of, so we always say that we're not theologians on this podcast, and that's true. We're not. But one time, I'm pretty sure that someone had told me that church actually just means assembly. I don't know if that's true or not, but I believe that is for now. Anyway, it sounds good to me. So maybe you could say a little bit about like how Friendly Fire's worship gatherings lead to that different kind of assembly. You're kind of already getting into it in terms of that spirituality. Does meeting together in an unprogrammed way with people of different traditions or kind of spiritual biographies, like does that sort of encourage a certain kind of solidarity or like a certain kind of openness within, like when you're present at a struggle or something like that? What kind of like community do you think is sort of being born out of that sharing experience?
Yeah, so this is Michael. I think I'll take a chunk of that one. we actually, we talked about this a little bit before the call, and one of the big things that we sort of see is like a unity, and because we have this sort of unity in a vision of a better world in the here and now, a lot of how our assembly expresses itself is directed towards some kind of action. So one good example of this is we had during the prison strike, we had a unprogrammed worship actually outside of the police headquarters here in Philadelphia. And so that wound up being a healing space for a lot of people who had been recently brutalized by the police at various protests, including Occupy ICE. And then afterwards, because once again, I love doing this, we did an exorcism of the police headquarters as well, which involves a lot of me screaming through a mic at the police about how if they don't change their ways, they're going to hell. So a lot of it, too, does involve a lot of openness to various ways of expressing spirituality. I'm definitely one of the super orthodox members of the group. I was raised Lutheran, and I have my copy of the Book of Concord, and I know exactly where it is in my house. So I think a lot of, personally, what I get here is this broadening of my experience of what God can and does look like, what it is to be sort of in touch or in communion with the divine in whatever way you want to phrase that.
Huh, that's cool.
Yeah, that's super cool. I like this. I like this so much more than I thought.
Margot, Chris, do you guys have any insight into that as well? Like, what has that assembly sort of meant for you guys?
I think for me, so I was raised Catholic, and it formed a lot of like my own imagery and how I imagine things, how I approach the world. So no matter what, Catholicism is like this thorn in my side I can't really get rid of, because it's also part of my own like cultural makeup. Like it informs a lot of like the practices that I have culturally, like specifically as like a Cajun, and a lot of it has to do with dancing and weird like magic rituals that grandmothers would do behind closed doors. And so that's not something I can leave behind just because I believe that capitalism is bad and it needs to be destroyed and we need to build a better world. Like that's something that pushes me into that. Whether I like it or not, it's there with me. So I like that. Like what drew me into Friendly Fire was like that, going back to the heart of what these things are. And for me, like that's Christianity. That's the heart of where I'm at, and it teaches me to build a new kingdom, to build a kingdom that belongs to the poor, or there are no poor.
Yeah, and for me at least, this is and this is Chris. This has helped me heal a lot of. This assembly's helped me heal a lot of trauma that I've had, with my relationship to Christianity, specifically Catholicism, but just my relationship in general with the church, Christians. It has been for a really long time. I after leaving the Catholic Church when I was 13 or so, I jumped around to a lot of religions and kind of did that wandering the desert sort of period in my life. All the way to one point, I was living in a monastery, getting ready to take monastic rites, at a Zen monastery. And a lot of it was me running away from Christianity. And even now, coming to Islam, being here, organizing with Christians, my partner, who's also part of Friendly Fire, is a Christian. It's helped me find the love that I once felt, within Christian spaces, and, accessing a lot of the, the good that comes with following someone like Jesus. And yeah, so spending this time, that's often very intimate with Christians, it's really helped me inform my own spirituality and, heal and access a lot of the, youthful spirituality I felt as a kid growing up Catholic.
If I can jump in really quick, I think another thing about Friendly Fire is that it is really against an idea of like Christian supremacy in this space. Like it's not a space that dominates the. Oh, sorry. I think one thing about Friendly Fire is that it's a space that doesn't like have this like Christian supremacy, or it's trying not to have this space that is Christian supremacy. So it's open to like the broad spectrum of mystics of the left, and there aren't that many spaces that allow for that kind of chaos. But I think it's a holy chaos, and it's a good chaos that creates conflicts that bring us closer together.
That's cool. I really like the way that you put that. It's very inspiring. I mean, I'm not a very like chaotic person in my own personal life, so part of that sounds like kind of a nightmare to me, but also like in like a very good way. Like I'm sort of asking myself why I'm actually kind of not like not into something that's so like clearly awesome, like really working out in Philadelphia. So that gives me a lot to think about.
If it makes you feel any better, well, I personally love the unprogrammed worship. I have a strong space in my heart for the programmed worship, which is one of the things I actually love about Friendly Fire. Is there's a lot of room for various modes of approaching spirituality in community.
That's cool. That's cool that it's open to so many sort of expressions. I like that a lot. Well, so not only are you all part of Friendly Fire in one way or another, but you're all also part of the IWW. I think this is probably the first time that we've actually had folks from the IWW on, so that's pretty neat. 91 episodes is too long probably for that. Well, so on that point though, like what are the industrial workers of the world up to? Are there other people of faith there? What's it like to be sort of a person of faith and also organizing with the Wobbly?
Yeah, so this is Michael. We all sort of decided that I should probably be the one to answer this, because I actually just earlier this evening was joking that my personal sort of mission work is to get everybody to join the IWW. So,
as this question came up, they literally just put on their IWW cap, lower on their brow, so they're ready.
An actual hat.
No, I'm wearing an IWW hat right now. So there's a number of different things the IWW is up to here in Philadelphia. The current branch here in Philadelphia is relatively young. It's just over about a year old. It's been in like its chartered form. It existed prior to that as a much smaller organization. And one of the difficulties in that is that when a labor union is small, it makes it hard to get the ball rolling. But as we've been growing, we're taking on a number of different organizing projects. We're hoping to work more sort of in coalition. I should also say that I'm not officially speaking on behalf of the IWW here, because I could get in trouble for not making that clear. As far as people of faith go, there are a few like people who aren't really involved in Friendly Fire, who are religious, who are IWW members. And it's also been sort of a joke that to be sort of one of the really regular members of Friendly Fire means that you're going to join the IWW. Mostly because I won't stop harassing you until you do. As far as like the second question, what's it like to be a person of faith in a Wobbly? I don't know if there's anything really sort of specific about it. I mean, like there have been a number of people of faith that have had different levels of interaction with the IWW. I know that you're going to be talking about that in the course you're teaching. Because I listen.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks for that free plug.
Your podcast is great, and so I've been hearing about, especially because the way the IWW is set up is that it doesn't have. I mean, we have our sort of basic line, which is like a political line, which is the preamble to the Constitution, which is a great piece of writing, and I recommend everybody read it. The IWW is more about method, which gives a lot more space for variance in belief. Its methodology is technically called revolutionary unionist. It's got a lot of overlaps with anarcho-syndicalism, but you're not required to be an anarchist to be part of the IWW either. And I think something sort of similar applies as far as religion goes. The IWW is very explicitly not taking any kind of stand on religion. I think those of us who are religious and Wobblies have a lot of people to look up to.
Does that resonate with the other two of you as like fresh Wobblies, like toddler Wobblies?
I mean, so I'm effectively like total newborn Wobbly. I literally just paid my first dues on Sunday. So So I'm like as new as you can be. But from the one meeting, I would agree.
So I guess I could speak a little bit. I'm also still a baby wobbly, but by 6 months.
I mean, I'm not exactly a long-term wobbly. I studied wobbles.
Well, I'm a lazy wobbly. I don't wobble too much. Like, one of the beautiful things I saw about the IWW and that like kept me in the IWW, because after I joined, I was kind of like, oh, like, should I really be here? Like, will I be any use here? Or some thoughts like that. I remember I was experiencing like some hardship at my workplace, where my boss was like threatening to fire me because of like an injury that I had gotten at my workplace, and then later had messed up even more. And the Wobblies all just like gathered around me. So it was like this beautiful image of community that I think a lot of Christians, hope for in their churches. But like we're seeing like this beautiful image of like what is called Christian community in a non-Christian, not a non-explicitly Christian space. So I think it's a model for the church, especially for those who are in the church.
That's really neat. Finding those kind of like analogs between the IWW and the church is cool. Probably like really productive thing to think about. Well, I guess that helps us kind of ask another question. So we asked Taesung and Catherine this in the past, but we can ask you guys as well. Friendly Fire is like a really interesting thing because it isn't just a religious experiment, but it's also a leftist experiment because you draw from a lot of different leftist tendencies. How does that work? Like, are there any tensions that come up when you're organizing? Is it generally kind of easy to work on projects together? What's it like to negotiate your associations outside of Friendly Fire within that organization? I don't know. How does all that mix up together?
I don't know. Sometimes I think that one of the funny things is there's so many different tendencies within Friendly Fire. I mean, I think just on this call we have.
I'm an anarcho-syndicalist.
I'm like a Leninist / soft anarcho-Maoist.
I'm whatever works is really my tendency, but I like to say Maoism. But it's this kind of interesting model of what a lot of people call left unity, but I don't even think left unity is the right term because we operate like all doing our own things, but together as like a community, and then doing things together as well on the things that we agree with.
Yeah, and I think too, what's important is, this often comes up, because after our prayer meetings, there's often some, just general conversation and, politics tend to come up. I think what's really important is that one thing we do really well is we all understand that regardless of our, flavor of left, we really kind of have, we recognize that we have shared goals. The biggest shared goal being, the dismantling of capitalism. Mm-hmm. And, there are obviously further overlaps. So I think that really, that same spirit that we apply to our openness of, whoever wants to come to these unprogrammed meetings that we do and the organizing that Friendly Fire, wants to do. And, things like our, retreat that we did last year and the one that's coming up, this upcoming year, is this notion that, we have to come together, we have to work together, find our common goals and work towards those. And, that's a similar model that's, taken in, the IWW, are working towards these common goals. And I think that's really important to all of us. And I think that comes through in the organizing that we do also.
Yeah, I think most of what I've seen, at least personally, like the furthest any tension goes is a bit of like friendly shit talking, which does come up a bit, both from the standard communist versus the anarchist variants.
Oh
like shit talking goes both directions. But that's really as far as I see it, and I think there's a lot of strength to be had in that, like, we have a thing that we're doing, and it's sort of relatively clear. I think it's sort of the same thing in the IWWs. There's like an idea of like, here's what we're supposed to be doing, and we see it here as well in Friendly Fire. And if you're on board with doing the thing, then it's not a huge concern exactly which theorists you treat as sort of the gold standard or whatever else.
Yeah.
Do you all think that? Sorry, this isn't a question we were planning on asking you, but I'm gonna do it anyways. Do you all think that since you meet together regularly for worship and kind of share some kind of like bigger experience than just being anarchists and communists and whatever, do you think that kind of contributes to the willingness to work together, even though you are, you do have these sort of differences in political tendency?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think we also have this strong familial sense about us too. We beyond the organizing, beyond the meetings. At the end of the day, we really do care about all of each other. We care about our well-being, each other's well-being, and I think that translates to how we meld together for organizing. But I think more importantly, also gives us a model to inform ourselves when going out and interacting, with the people who aren't directly organizing with us, whether it's Wobblies, whether it's people whether it's other groups that we come into contact with at any number of protests. It informs a way for us to reach out and find ways to connect those people. And I think that's kind of what it's all about,
Yeah, that's really neat. I mean, it makes sense. Like, if you break bread together or whatever, you should maybe find ways to navigate those differences in a way that's like productive and maybe like gentle teasing or whatever, instead of I don't know, like the kind of thing that threatens to tear you apart. I think that's a really neat thing. Maybe we could talk a little bit about, I guess, a couple of the actions that you've been involved in. I want to ask Margot specifically something about the Occupy Ice rally, but maybe in a minute, because I also think it would be good to get a couple other things on the table. So if one of you could talk just really quickly about the anti-fascist rally that just happened, 10 those Proud Boys, what's what? And then secondly, the retreat that y'all are planning, that might be like a really cool thing, and especially the retreat, it's like important to kind of get out in front of it for listeners who might be interested.
Right. So about the anti-fascist event that happened, so it wasn't the kind of anti-fascist event that has become sort of the public consciousness. There were people in Black Bloc there, but that was not the predominant factor. It was just large turnout of people, all of whom were unified in saying the Proud Boys need to buzz off. Yeah, so as far as Friendly Fire's presence there, we didn't have like a super visible presence. A lot of people, I'd say, on the left in Philadelphia know about us at this point. And a few of us are recognizable as being members of Friendly Fire, and we were there. We were with a lot of Wobblies because that's where our major overlap is. But yeah, I mean, we were mostly just looking through the crowd, trying to pay attention, make sure that people were safe as much as we could.
Yeah, I mean, and this is Chris here. At one point, we identified that there was a Proud Boy on our side of the protest, and we eventually got a bunch of people, including some Wobblies, together, and we basically just screamed at them until they got the hell out of that side of the protest. And later on, there was also Michael and I here got in the face of some police officers, and were telling them how soulless they were. So that was really our main presence at at that counter protest.
I like that. That's good practice.
Yeah.
It turned into a little riffing session for a few minutes.
Yeah, they were arresting someone and throwing them into a paddy wagon. So they had set up with a line of bicycles, and they were trying to push the crowd back. Yeah, and we just gotten right up against the bikes, and we're just staring them down and just telling them how bad they were for protecting Nazis, and how soulless they were, and they were damned, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I think it started with me asking one how it felt to be a fascist collaborator. And when I eventually got no response, I said, "Oh, there's nothing. Okay, that makes sense." And then we just went from there. So
yeah. So that was really our our biggest contribution to that kind of press. Well, not even though we there was a big effort for getting out and trying to reach out to the people in the surrounding neighborhoods where this rally was taking place, and the weeks leading up to the rally. Just trying to reach out and tell people, in general, not with any sort of political agenda or as necessarily an outfit of Friendly Fire, but just trying to get people out, mobilizing liberals and just trying to build as much mass as possible. So it doesn't have to be an explicitly black bloc counter protest. It can be, a non-violent counter protest where, there were the official numbers, something like 75 Proud Boys were there, but it looked like a crowd of 20, and there was at least a couple hundred people on the other side. So I would say that was a big thing. It's just reaching out to the people in the city, living around the area, trying to mobilize them. So
cool. Well, what about the next Friendly Fire retreat? We heard from Haesung last time around about it, but what's planned this time? Is there anything that you're really looking forward to about it?
Yeah, so for me, the theme is very exciting. And I think for everyone who's planning it right now, or even who has heard of it, the theme is Another Church is Possible. Dual power. No. No?
That was Haesung yelling out in the background.
Militant discipleship, dual power, and the end of the world.
I'm excited about both of them.
Yeah, they're both good names.
No, they're both very good names. Very good things. So the big thing for me is talking about what is possible together, moving as a community and building up a religion that comes from the base, and not even a religion, just like this shared belief that comes up from the base that is formed in whatever space, whether it's Philadelphia or Minneapolis or New York.
Yeah, and it's I think this time around it's planned to be a bit longer than the previous one, with a lot more opportunities to hear from people involved in not just the Philadelphia Friendly Fire community, because there are other people who are involved in Friendly Fire doing their own thing in other cities. We just happen to be sort of the one with the largest social media presence. But also, yeah, just an opportunity to hear from this sort of national community again, and also other people who are interested in showing up for these things, and the opportunity to have lots of different workshops on anything from theory to very practical types of activities. There's some talk about a potential fermentation workshop, which I would personally be looking forward to. So,
yeah, and I think it's really important. There's kind of been this overarching theme, at least coming from me, of collaboration. Coming together to work towards these common goals, and especially as once again, religious leftists are a small slice of the total amount of leftists. So coming together through this distributed network of people all over the country, coming together in one place, praying together, meditating on our goals together, and trying to figure out a way to move forward together as a friendly fire, I think is really important. And while also being able to just be able to enjoy each other's presence, gain insight from one another, enjoy food with one another. As Michael was saying, learn some practical skills along the way. I'm really hoping to teach a sauerkraut workshop. So yeah. I think that's why we're so excited, is this kind of this opportunity to come together, build this new church. That's kind of what this is all about. Another church is possible. Figuring out a way to have this very grounded and significant spiritual presence outside of capitalism.
And I think it moves even beyond, like, whenever we say another church is possible, it moves beyond even our concept of what is church. We're not talking about founding another church. That would be another thing completely. What we're talking about is moving beyond this kind of thing that is created for us. There's a quote from Herbert McCabe that says, just as the Marxist waits for the disillusionment of the state, so too does the Catholic wait patiently for the disillusionment of the church. And I think that's the space that we're moving into, is a space beyond the church or the temple or this organized way of belief.
That's really cool, really exciting. Also, like, one of my favorite McCabe quotes as well. So I do that a lot. it's so great I mean, we've done a couple episodes on this theme of like the People's Church, which has sprung up kind of seemingly unconnectedly in a number of different places, like in the labor movement in a few places, among the Young Lords in New York City, and like a few other places as well. And it is really neat, like you were just saying, that you know there's a ground of like solidarity that kind of just encourages thinking about church differently, and like what would it mean to actually talk about that and try to articulate it. I think it's like a really valuable thing, just to like take a step back and try to get a bunch of people to like think together, but also like do it together. Like the People's Church might just have to know a lot about like making sauerkraut or pickles or something. That's cool. I dig that.
Yeah, philosophy and theology and like organizing is awesome, but hi, this is now a podcast about making sauerkraut. That sounds so good. I love making fridge pickles. I love fermenting stuff. It's my fave. So I think that has made me more interested than anything right now. I'm also just kind of hungry too, I think. So that's got something to do with it. But that sounds great. Cool. Well, I think maybe to start wrapping up this conversation, we were hoping, Margot, that you would maybe read something that you'd written previously about the Occupy ICE rally. After it was over, you, well, I mean, you got arrested. That was a thing. But you wrote a really amazing reflection on the Friendly Fire website, and we were just hoping that you could read it for us. Would you be willing?
Yeah, totally. So it's something that's always interesting to come back to, because it's just a very, as much as it was a moment of like a lot of chaos and fear, it was also such a strong moment of solidarity, and it sealed a lot of deep camaraderies that are now like a central part of my life. So it's really interesting to see how what the state does to destroy us is really what builds us up together and stronger as a community. Yeah, I can read it. We were on the first line of protesters, and we were given no warning. Bike cops began pushing forward. Officers kicked as they stepped over to arrest us. I had a rosary in my hands. I was praying to Mary, the Mother of Liberation, as officers forced my hands behind my back. I heard them screaming, "She has a rosary! She has a rosary!" I felt them rip it from my hands. They broke it, threw it on the ground, and stomped on it in front of me. I continued to pray as they dragged me through the street, as they hit my head on the van again and again, as they drove the van with me hanging out, my legs still on the sidewalk. I thought of the thousands of immigrants whose rosaries were taken from them as they crossed the border. I thought of the children who cry every night begging for their parents. I thought of Christ being violently arrested and beaten, and I considered myself blessed to share in his wounds. While my brothers and sisters are held captive, I too am captive. While my brothers and sisters are beaten, I too am beaten. This is the body of Christ, and I will not allow his body to be broken and separated by man-made borders. It's time to abolish ICE.
Man, it is a really powerful thing that you wrote, and it feels even more powerful hearing you read it, actually. So thank you for doing that. It's something I always come back to, like, I don't know why, but in my browser, when I start typing in like certain words, this particular page always comes up. So maybe like the internet is just providentially directing me back towards it over and over. Thank you, Google, I guess. But rereading it now and kind of hearing you read it now, I can't really help but also think of like the migrant caravan that's coming to the U.S. border. So, you know, how do you think that Christians can be in solidarity with them, both mystically and materially? So you have this kind of mystical experience by virtue of being materially in solidarity, you know, really being present, trying to do something about this situation. Any thoughts about that now?
Yeah, I think the first thing is that people in whatever faith tradition need to not be afraid to have these conversations about just sitting down and not knowing what to do. Like, they need to not be afraid to sit down and say, we don't know what to do. Does anyone have any idea? Because I think the situation is very jarring. Because a lot of people are waking up for the first time about what America has been doing for since its founding. So I think that these conversations, if they're not being had then there's no real solidarity that can be had even mystically, because our mysticism has to be truly tied into our presence, not only our presence to God, but our presence to the people surrounding us, because of that material connection between God and man. And then the next part is that I really do believe in the power of prayer, but I don't know what it looks like. You know, I think growing up, I thought of like this kind of like, forgive me for this example, but like a genie god, like you rub the lamp and you get the wish if you say the right prayer, if you say the right things. But really understanding that intercession, like praying for them more as a choosing to be present in that sorrow with them, or sometimes even choosing to be present in that joy that they're experiencing with them, but not being afraid to enter in that space of a deep empathy, where you are feeling broken and questioning what's happening around you. So I think for me, that's what intercession feels like now, a different kind of view of God and who he is. And then the next thing is like, I mean, this is obvious, but like donate to organizations that are on the border right now. I think that I said, I forget the name of the group, RAICES is president at the border in Cosecha is also present, and many other groups, many other people are going down there and just offering whatever they can to witness what's happening there, because there isn't really much coverage, and we aren't seeing this in like as much. This isn't even something that's being talked about at like the Thanksgiving table when my parents were like having dinner. Like it's not something that's in like the mainstream conversations that are happening.
Margot, I like what you said about how it's okay just to say that we don't know what to do and to ask for help. I think that's a really good starting point. And yeah, your suggestions of donating to races is good. I think that's a good idea to kind of give to the people that are already there. It just kind of strikes me as a situation that I don't know, like we don't know how to act, and I think that's what makes it kind of so tragic in the first place, is that we just don't really know what to do. I suppose the advantage that sort of being people who are religious and leftist, people who are both religious and leftist, we have is that like we know how to lament and we know how to pray, and I guess that's the one thing we do have going for us.
I kind of want to throw on something. As a Lutheran, I think of Dietrich Bonhoeffer a lot, and one of the things he was famous for saying is it's not our duty to, or it's not necessarily our duty always, or it's not the goal. I can't get the exact quote in my head, but it's not the goal to bind up the wounds of those being crushed under the wheel. The goal is to drive a wedge in the spokes, stop it from functioning. Mm-hmm. The tear gas was fired. Tear gas has made someone. It's not ICE in this case, but as far as these broader issues go, I mean, Customs and Border Protection it subcontracts to various companies to get done what needs to be done. These companies need to be held to account for the fact that they are enabling this. A lot of these wealthier right-wing groups that are going down to cause problems for the caravan, a lot of them are being funded in various ways. And figuring out who's funding them is an essential thing. There's a lot of, it's not just necessarily about being physically where the most obvious aspect of this is happening, but also about looking at the various ways in which power operates to make that wheel turn and find your own place to drive something between the spokes of the wheel and try and get it to slow down, if not stop.
Yeah, I like that a lot too, and I think it has a certain force, that Bonhoeffer quote, coming from somebody who's in the IWW, driving the spoke in the wheel. Just because, like, you know, I'm a communist. Like, I believe in the party. I think that there's got to be like a real sort of party organized change, and like I'm all about it. I'm here for that. But what I love and admire so much about the IWW is that the general philosophy just seems to me to be kind of like, well, yeah, party or no party, like we got to get something done. And I think that's like really good advice to say that, like, you know, we should be thinking kind of long term, and we should also be kind of looking for places where we can like gum up the works instead of just waiting for the violence to happen and reacting or something like that.
The other part of it is that there's this belief in direct action, in doing things in the here and now that actually change stuff. I mean, if enough pressure is thrown at the various, like, at, say, the tech companies that are enabling the surveillance state that ICE uses in order to more efficiently deport people, that tech companies know that it's poison to touch ICE, then that's going to create a genuine, like, lasting change too. So there's this belief that sort of organizing ourselves to say, well, this thing needs to change, so let's go change it, is a crucial part.
So the Magnificast is not a wildly popular podcast. I mean, a bunch of people listen to it, and that's nice, and we appreciate that. I think something that the Magnificast does for people is kind of like gives them a list of resources for their own sort of expression of Christianity and leftism in their lives. And I think when we talk about Friendly Fire, people respond pretty positively, and it's like something that they want to know more about. So for all the other people that are living, you know, across the United States, and not in Philadelphia specifically, like if they really want to sort of be a part of Friendly Fire or start organizing like with them or something, how would they get involved with you all?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that you could do is go to our website to get in contact with us, friendlyfirecollective.wordpress.com. And on there you can find different ways to contact us. And then if you want to know more about what's happening in Philadelphia right now, you can go to our Facebook page, which is Friendly Fire. Is it just Friendly Fire? It's not Friendly Fire Collective, it's just Friendly Fire. Friendly Fire Collective.
Yeah.
gotta just know.
And also, you know, for anyone who's interested in, you know, the upcoming retreat that we have been talking about today, you can go to friendlyfireretreat.org. Right now, it's just a page, you know, talking briefly about what we're doing. You know, PayPal link for whoever feels like, you know, donating money, but that'll also be where we're going to put information regarding to applying to actually going to the retreat, as well as just additional information about, you know, the types of workshops and things that are going to be going on there as well.
That's great. Well, we love hearing from everybody in the Friendly Fire Collective that we've had a chance to chat with. It's been fun to talk with Haesung, but also really fun to get a little bit more perspective from some other people and get some more like vantage points, I guess. I think what you guys are doing is like really special. I don't know. I just always think of that. I'm really sort of bothered that other journalists don't seem to be picking that up. Hopefully they do soon enough. But in the meantime, like, thanks so much for coming and sharing a little bit with us. And we really hope that people support you guys financially and spiritually as well. I think that like what you guys are doing is a really important thing in the world right now. So yeah, I mean, like, there's a danger in like us underestimating how very good Friendly Fire is. And I just like, yeah, I don't really know what else to say except that I'm just like very grateful that you all are present there. It makes me feel a little less alone in the world. I've got a little bit of that Friendly Fire burning in my own heart, I feel. So, so thanks for the work you're doing, and also thanks for hanging out with us tonight.
Thank you so much, and I can't wait to work with you all continually on the retreat, since that is a Christians for Socialism project as well.
Yeah, we're into it 100%. Thanks for listening to the Magnificast. If you like what you heard, you can find us at all the usual places. You can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/themagnificast. You can find us on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We've got an email. We don't have a post office box, so I guess if that's your jam, too bad. Also, a final announcement, at least for me, is the course that I'm teaching in January is still accepting registrations. It's at ICS. It is called Organized Religion, Christianity and Anti-Capitalism in the U.S. and Canada. Really excited to teach it. Some of the stuff that we talked about a little bit in this episode will have some relevance on that syllabus, because we're going to talk about Friendly Fire a little bit at the very, very end. Trying to contextualize some contemporary stuff in a long, long history of Christians resisting capitalism.
Oh, wait, Friendly Fire is actually on the syllabus?
Yeah, the last class, there's just like a couple of newsletters that we'll go over, and from them and from Christians for Socialism and a couple other like news reports of different activist groups.
Whoa, that is so cool.
I know. I did a great job.
We should have told them that they're going to be academically studied. That should have been the wrap-up question that we.
Yeah, we should have. Well, next time. The way to do that, to register for that class, is to email our registrar at academic-registrar@icscanada.edu. You can study the people in this episode and email them all your questions, I guess.
Cool. I wish I had a cool class to pitch too, but I don't. So just take Dean's. There you go.
Thanks for honoring that non-compete clause.
Yeah, I regret signing it. That I couldn't have my own Christian left class at a different university. Oh well. Cool. Well, the intro music is from Amari Armstrong, and the outro music is from The Illogical Spoon. And thanks again to the Friendly Fire folks for talking with us and answering all our good questions, and letting Dean put them under the microscope and study them as if they were, samples on a plate. All right.
You can't really thank them because they didn't give me permission. But
that's true. Oh, hey man, that's not cool.
I mean, they're putting it out there in the world, so just how it is. So that's how academia works.
That's true.
Well, till next time, keep that Friendly Fire burning in your heart. That's my favorite song by the folk trio Margot, Michael, and Chris.
And you stay up late in Jackson. You keep your hoods up. Well, you keep your hoods up and you stay up late. Oh, don't mind a cold night, but we might mind if you leave too soon. So come on now, it's still early. Besides, what else are you gonna do? As we kissed in the alley by the Michigan Theater, fall snow was glowing in the lights of the downtown. Saw a spark in your eyes, I just spoke it. Said we're gonna turn this whole place upside down. Then you said, my dear, do you really mean this? I said, I only know what I feel right now. I said,